All right. Good morning, everybody. Full of the joys of spring this morning, even though it's not spring. It is the 12th of March. We have lots of news to talk about. We've got Jack Motlate in the studio.
Good morning.
Jack. How are you?
I'm chilled, man. It may not be spring, but I definitely have a spring in my step.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Okay, yeah. Last thing I want is to come in here in the morning and people are like, grumbling, all that shit. You don't want that.
Yeah.
So you're feeling optimistic and positive and hopeful,
yes,
like so many people in this country are this year.
Yep.
With the elections and all the rest. I know that that's a big focal point of what we've been doing on the podcast party and Democracy 101. By the way, today, since we're talking about this, because I'm such a professional, I just segued it in there. We've got Lukhona Mnguni, who is the Governance, Politics and Development Specialist at the Rivonia Circle.
That is a very long title.
I know, but he does know what he's talking about.
Yes,
he can pretty much answer any question we have related to this election that's coming up, the parties involved, the way that our system works. I mean, he's really, really smart guy. He's also a PhD candidate in political science at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, so he does know his stuff.
Yes, he does.
And he's been on the show before. He spoke about voter apathy, which is another subject worthy of us just prodding at a little bit more.
Yeah, just taking a deeper look at that. Because, I mean, I think a lot of South Africans realize just how important this election is.
Well, you think. But you've been talking to people on the ground. If you say, I think, I get worried.
No, well, I mean, sometimes you don't want to make statements that, I don't know, alienate people.
Okay.
So I will say, I think, just to make it seem like there's a lot more in the works than there
You're
really
like
is.
these people who bring out the research surveys and then they couch the opinions in I thinks and perhaps and potentially and maybe and allegedly.
There's a real possibility that this could happen. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Did you see the Brenthurst Foundation? And we had Ray Hartley on the show not so long ago.
Yes, we did. Yeah.
They brought out their survey and then people were either like thrilled with it, like especially all the DA people are like, yeah, this is exactly right. And there's nothing wrong with this survey and it's terrific. And there were other people who were like, no. So the EFF complaining that it's just lies and bullshit. So, yeah.
But we all need a healthy dose of skepticism every now and again.
So here's the thing that I thought was most interesting about that, because, you can complain and say, well, this is not the survey I had asked for. This is not the survey I wanted.
Right.
But I saw an interesting post by, of all people, Gareth van Onselen, who's often said interesting things. He said, one of my favorite things about polls is seeing those who react and for whom the numbers don't feel right, or when those numbers jar with their personal Twitter bubble, which is only 7% of registered voters on Twitter, or the last dinner conversation. So if you don't agree, if you like, you don't feel, in inverted commas, it's right, or your personal Twitter bubble says so, or last night's dinner conversation was different to what those numbers reveal. Then the whole thing's just nonsense.
But you know how I feel about feelings, right?
Well, that's why I bring it up with you.
Like, I really don't care much for feelings at all. 90% of the time they're wrong, and half of the 90% they change all the time. They change all the time. And for you to base your entire life, or at least the more important things that you have to decide based on your feelings, well, good luck to you.
Yeah.
Genuinely.
I don't know what the answer is, but there will be a number of polls done. There will be various parties that will bring their numbers and their predictions. It's good. The more the merrier, right?
Yeah. And
the more the merrier. And you could take it with a pinch of salt.
Thank you. Because, I mean, it's not cast in stone, right? Like, the only numbers that we'll actually care about are the election
actual results.
That's it.
I saw the IEC are trying to tiptoe around the ANC's candidate list being revealed.
Oh my God.
Although I don't understand why it shouldn't be revealed.
It was going to be public anyway.
Yeah, so I this is a whole storm in a teacup that's really got I don't see the point. of anyone getting uptight about the candidate lists. We saw on Saturday already, I saw the lists for MK, EFF, and ANC, and there were no surprises on any of them. I didn't go, oh, the only thing I thought was funny was Carl Niehaus was it?
What is it? 187 or something stupid like that. But anyway, like I think what these political parties are trying to do, in fact, perhaps even the ANC, is to delegitimize the IEC to the point that when the election results come back, they're like, yeah, I told you. They stole the election.
Ignore them, they're liars.
Yeah. And it's like, guys.
You can see them already lining this up. And then another storm in a teacup is, and Redi Tlhabi was on this yesterday, like white on rice. She was all bent out of shape about the DA asking the Americans to observe our elections. Now, it is the most important election since 94. Everyone agrees.
Yep.
We know that there are dirty tricks all over the world being perpetrated, including in the United States.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there are people who don't believe that the 2020 election was
legitimate.
Yeah. So the people who think that there was the mail-in ballots were an issue, and they were. There are people who say, oh, a lot of these ballot harvesters would go out to houses and they would just fill in 4 people. Right. And that also happened. And so the US perhaps has a unique point of view on this. They're not the only country that were asked to observe. In fact, people from all over the world are asked, and whoever pitches.
Right.
Anyway, people were all like bent out of shape. They're like, oh no, I can't believe that anyone would ask the United States to. This is clearly election interference from a foreign country. And we're like, I looked at this and went, are you living on the same planet we are?
Clearly not.
They've been asked by a political party here. It's like when the MDC in Zimbabwe says to South Africa, listen, won't you come and observe our elections? We don't all jump up and down and go, no, we're not going to get involved in the sovereignty of another country. You're there to observe the elections. Doesn't mean influence them.
Yeah, I mean, what is the worst case scenario in these people's minds? What's going to happen exactly?
Well, I mean, these are just people who, and honestly, I'm surprised at Redi because I think she's pretty smart, and I've always enjoyed my interactions with her, despite the fact that she, right in the middle of the hot part of COVID, decided to like try and set me up with some dude who had clearly been briefed on how to make me look like I was a COVID denier and anti-vaxxer and all this stuff. Anyway, it ended up not redounding terribly in his honor.
Right.
And afterwards, she was full of apologies. So I can only imagine that it was her producers.
Perhaps.
Don't know. Or maybe she was involved. But I have no beef with Redi. And I'm just surprised that this is, of all the subject matter that's worthy of discussion this week.
That's what she chose.
Now, I saw a story that's much more interesting. Apparently, Gwede Mantashe paid 200,000 Rand to an umtagati to give Pravin Gordhan the squirts.
Like,
no, sorry, not the
terrible stomach
constipation.
There you go. Like, wow.
All right, so don't pay attention to any other stories because that is the only one that matters to me. I think it's so funny. Like, imagine Pravin Gordhan like, it's such a terrible constipation. I find that hilarious. So first of all, I can't believe that Gwede Mantashe has 200,000 Rand to just piss away.
You can't believe that. That's the part of the story you don't believe?
The point is, this is why. And this tells you a whole story about a lot of people in the ANC. In fact, people who have made all their money through politics.
Right.
They don't know how to spend it. They don't know what they're doing. They will always end up poor. They will end up poor. Gwede Mantashe will die a poor man. Watch. And if he doesn't, it'll be a miracle.
Yeah.
Because the guy's prepared to spend 200,000 Rand. Now, let me tell you what you could do for 200,000 Rand. You could put in off-the-grid solar in your house. But of course, he doesn't care about that because we're paying, we probably have already for him.
Yep.
You could buy a car. Not the greatest car, but you could get a decent car for 200,000 Rand.
Yep.
you could probably, that's your grocery bill for maybe even a year and a half. And
At
that's
least.
extravagant living, right?
Yeah.
That's extravagant living. I'm trying to think. There's so many things that you could do.
There's a lot of things you could.
That's the school fees at a pretty impressive school for your kids.
You can do a lot of home renovations.
You could do loads of those things.
Like,
there's plenty you could do.
There's a lot.
You got a very nice holiday for 200,000 rand.
My goodness,
Let me tell you, you could take your pick anywhere in the world
and actually come back with things in hand. Like, so it wouldn't just be the experience of being there. You could come back with mementos as well.
Yeah,
for 200K, it's a lot of money.
Anyway, what does he spend it on? He spends it on a sangoma stroke umtagati to give constipation. I mean, this is like such.
It's like, what the hell is going on?
Puerile. My political enemy, Pravin Gordhan, I'm gonna, instead of like taking him on, tackling him on the issues.
Yeah.
Because Pravin's he's no intellectual giant. Let's put it that way. He's a very competent, he's competent at being a communist.
Right.
He's not very good at anything, but he's competent. Okay. Which in the ANC, I know is a rare thing. But this shows you how incompetent Gwede is, that he looks at the scenario and he goes, oh, the only way I can get this guy out of my way is to get the Sangoma to give him constipation.
Right.
It's like, it's such a, you would expect children on the playground to be like that. I'm going to get the witch to curse you.
It's like,
I'm going to get the witch to turn your feet into cookies. That's what it is.
Yeah, it is. And the lack of imagination to me is just shocking. And somehow we're supposed to believe that Gwede and all of the people that he considers colleagues, the people that he's not trying to give constipation
These people who sit on the cabinet together.
Yeah. We're supposed to believe that these are the people that are going to usher us into some future that we're all going to be happy about.
Some guy who's so superstitious, he's busy backing up someone else's asshole.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
This is the kind of person we put in charge of a major part of our economy.
It's madness.
Because he was Minister of Mining. I mean, this is South Africa's entire economy for years has been based on that. This is the man we trust. Anyway, I do think it would have been really funny if Pravin had got constipation. So there's a part of me that's like, come on, work Sangoma, make it happen.
Please
put that muti in there.
But it's not past me the fact that he's Indian. Like giving an Indian constipation of like going right up against it, eh? Like,
I didn't even think of that.
Seriously, you have a lot of high ambitions, man. So perhaps on that side of things,
that's very funny.
Good looking out, Gwede. But you've got a tall order in front of you. I can tell you that much.
JP says, and here come the jokes. No need for a Sangoma. They're all full of shit.
Yep.
Not hard to give Pravin constipation. He's already so full of shit. Commie, says Reno. Can't get a decent car for 200K these days. Those days are long since over. No. I'm not saying not a brand new car, and not something that's what are you talking SUVs and things? You could get a car.
You could.
I mean, it's not going to be the kind of car that you will be excited to drive off the showroom floor. But let me tell you, if I gave you 200,000 rand and said to you, go and get a car, you'd be able to find one. And it would have electric windows, have aircon, all of that stuff. It's not going to be a state-of-the-art, best in its category car, but you get something decent.
You would.
And I'm going to challenge you on this when we get George Meany on the show, which he will be shortly. We'll talk to him about exactly this. You can buy a small car plus a piece of land, says Donna. I don't know about that.
Well, if you go to Mpumalanga and speak to
some little piece of land, I'm pretty
just
sure
a little tiny little chunk.
And then somebody says, don't you think Greedy is just trying to stay relevant? Okay, so Seamus, this idea that there are people in the world who are trying to stay relevant, because I often see this from always, really, I'm not saying this is you, but there are a lot of stupid people on the internet who accuse people who are in the news of trying to be in the news because they want to be relevant. Now, you either are or aren't relative by popular poll, but you can't try to be relevant. I mean, there are people who try for attention,
sure,
but you can't try to be relevant. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, the words are different. Attention and relevant.
It belies a lack of understanding of how the media business works, and that's why I'm here to explain it to you, so you don't have to keep saying things like this, Seamus, because I promise you, Redi Tlhabi is not driven by a desire to be relevant. Okay. And as much as you may disagree with her, and as much as that may be a very basic entry-level criticism of many people in the media, no one in the media is sitting there going, oh my God, I'm irrelevant. They don't think they're irrelevant. And it's not up to them to decide that they're relevant. It's like, what is the conversation today? And you know what? Today, the conversation could be about something that makes me irrelevant. It doesn't keep me up at night. I can absolutely assure you that there are no people in the media business who are sitting there going, oh my God, I'm irrelevant today. What am I going to do tomorrow? What they're trying to do either is get attention in the moment for something that they're trying to publicize or sell, or they've taken a very significant interest in a particular story, which propels them into relevance. To go around just looking for what is relevant means you'd be following whatever the trending topic on Twitter is, and that would be your designed subject matter for that day. You would just follow trends in order to be relevant to the most number of people on social media. It would be a horrible existence, and
it would be.
I can't imagine people would do that. So I don't think that's the prime motivator, and I just hate that criticism because I've seen it about me and people I know, and I just think there's no one sitting there going, "Oh, I'm so irrelevant today." I've often looked at stories that are in the news and gone, "There's nothing I can say about this."
Yeah,
I don't need to climb. I don't need to climb on this bandwagon. You know,
I don't know. I think there might be a couple of people in the industry
who are interested in being relevant.
Yeah,
their main motivator.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, then I've misread that, but it's possible. I don't think it's the chief prime mover.
Yeah, definitely not. I don't think it's the main motivator for a lot of people in the media space. But I think there's a couple in there that kind of go out of their way just to be at the center of certain topic conversations, and it is what it is. I mean, at the end of the day, we put stock in different things, and certain people enjoy what attention brings for them. So,
well, I'm sure Pravin Gordon is feeling very relevant.
Yeah,
in the fundament this morning.
I really wish we could call him and ask him how his stomach is doing. We need an update.
If only he was. If only he had a sense of humor. I once bumped into him in Pretoria.
Yeah.
He was going up some stairs and I was coming down. I said, Minister. Very serious man. No, I don't think he's the kind of guy who watches comedies.
Oh, he's one of those
and enjoys them. I think he only watches sad movies. I don't think he knows, what funny is. Maybe I'm being very unfair, but that's the impression I get.
Yeah, he does strike me as that kind of man, to be honest. Like, he gets angry at birds or something.
Yeah. Tracy says, speaking of petty socialists, you need to get Dan Corder on. That beanie sporting confused mess of a man, just loves spewing lies. He needs to be schooled properly by grown-ups. Who is Dan Corder? Who is he?
You don't know who Dan Corder is? He's this young dude, white guy. He's done well. He's like a political commentator, if I can put it that way. A lot of people follow him on TikTok and YouTube and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And I loved how he covered the Rugby World Cup. He had a lot of insight as far as that is concerned. And every now and again, he'll bring a topical issue to my attention. I enjoy the fact that he's not abrasive in how he comes across, but sometimes he can get things wrong. But I mean, every human being does that.
Everybody does. That's okay. Well, yeah, I'm afraid I can't add any value here, Tracy. So I'll have to look him up.
Yeah, I think it'll be a very interesting conversation between you and him, considering you guys don't necessarily see things from the same vantage point. I'd love to ref that match. That would be so much fun.
Cool. Jean or Jean says, here comes a lecture. I think we've let you down because I don't think we've gone into have we gone into a lecture yet this morning?
I don't think so.
No.
What were we going to lecture people about?
Okay, here's important information from Biasin. He knows what he's talking about. Too many black lentils in a biryani can constipate you.
Okay.
Gwede is paying way too much. He should have consulted me. All right, I like it.
Oh, man.
All right, in the news this morning, South Africa considers changes to work from home policies. What is the current policy?
I don't think there is one.
As far as I can tell, there are still a few people who are working from home, but the majority of people in this country are back at work.
Yes, they are.
Well, the ones who have work.
Yeah.
Because we've got massive unemployment.
Yeah.
So the ones who do have work, I think most companies have reinstituted old rules. It's like back to the office, Monday to Friday.
Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, if it assists productivity, hey, why not work from home? And as you said, the vast majority of people have actually gone back to the office.
How many people do you know who are actually disciplined enough to work from home? Because it is also an excuse for a lot of people to sleep in late, not get dressed properly, slob around the house, eat breakfast at 10 and take another breakfast break at 11 and have some coffee every 15 minutes.
The question is are you...
Pet the dog, fetch the kids, drop the kids, go to the shops. I was working from home.
No, but in between all of that, is the work actually getting done? That's the only thing I care about.
Well,
I really couldn't be bothered how you conduct yourself during the day. I couldn't care less. Okay, you could be sitting on top of your roof all day working from there, pretending you're this hard eater or whatever,
lying in the sun.
And you know what I mean?
Sure.
My question is, are you hitting the points I need you to hit?
Well, the Public Service Commission, this is the news story, has conducted a study on the impact of hybrid work arrangements and service delivery since March 2020. The PSC is recommending the Department of Public Service and Administration benchmark with other countries to see how they're handling work from home policies. They believe the public service needs to prioritize digitizing operations and making sure employees have access to the technology they need to work from home. So they're saying work from home is a thing. And we need to have the technology for people to be able to work
to facilitate that. Yeah,
which is all good and well, but there's some jobs you can't work from home on.
Yeah, they are.
I mean, what's a plumber going to do from home? What's an engineer? What's a doctor going to do from home?
Yeah, and those online consultations are a sham. I would never do that.
And sangomas giving you constipation. Additionally, training programs on new technologies should be created for employees. Finally, the PSC is recommending that a cost-benefit analysis be conducted. Okay, so basically, they haven't even got a policy.
They haven't.
They want to do a cost-benefit analysis so that some consulting firm can come in and make a ton of money figuring out whether or not we should work from home or not.
Yeah.
So your feeling is you don't care if people are messing around as long as they get the work done.
Get the job done.
Okay.
Like that's KPI. That's all I think about.
I mean, there is. Listen, I'm probably on your side on this. There's an argument to be made for productivity as opposed to office hours. They've done plenty of research already over the years about how many hours at work get wasted. Smokers, for example, constantly popping out for cigarettes, pretty much a third of the day that goes to smoke breaks.
Yeah.
Add to that lunch, getting to work, traffic, being late, leaving early. It really etches away slowly and surely at those working hours.
Sure.
And I think probably most people are only actually seriously productive for maybe 3 or 4 hours a day. The rest of the time they're padding.
Yeah.
And now because people are also on computers and phones the whole time, they're probably checking social media. They're not really doing work all the time.
So that time is shrinking.
I have a suspicion. I have a suspicion that if you actually measure productive hours, that real work is being done, it's nowhere near the work day, 9 to 5.
Yeah, without
there's no way, right?
There's no way.
So in other words, if you are at home and all those other things that I spoke about get factored in, it's probably, if you're disciplined, easy to get your whole day done in 3 hours at home.
Exactly. And again, if you can deliver on what we're paying you for, I've got no problem with it. Stay at home. In fact, you would be helping out a lot more people. That means one less car to deal with as far as the traffic is concerned.
Less petrol.
And less petrol. Less, there's I think there's an argument that could be made on either side of this. It just depends on how you view the entire thing. But
well,
I'm for it as long as people are actually productive.
There are a lot of companies that that do 1 day a week from home. So they'll say to their employees, we work from home on Thursday, for example. And then that's their policy. It seems to work for some, not so well for others. Some people like being in the office. For example, my brother has 2 little kids. He said it's impossible to work from home.
Yeah.
So he managed during lockdowns, but he said it was mostly really not productive because the kids just burst into your office while you're on an online meeting.
Yeah, and
we all know how that works, right? And there are people who don't have space at home to work. They basically have a tiny little place that they live in, and there's nowhere for them to put a desk and work. So it's difficult. I understand that too. And some people's jobs are not online jobs. You have to be present to do them. So Huge Reaction says, so much better to work from home. If your productivity drops, get back to work. Why not have the flexible hours if you must go back to the office, i.e. work from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. instead of 9 to 5? Well, that's one of the things that we've learned, I think, over the last couple of years. We've been able to experiment, which is good.
Yeah. And I'm of the opinion that we need to be living in a 24/7 economy in this country. There's enough of us.
Yeah.
There is definitely enough of us. And if you there's certain jobs that would make a lot more sense in shifts, like for argument's sake, taxi drivers. I feel like they could be working 24 hours a day. And perhaps if they were to get like
not the same people 24
no,
hours
not
a day.
the
You
same.
have accidents.
No. Everyone gets a shift and all of this stuff.
Right.
And you would have a lot less speeding taxis and all of this other stuff. And, you know, we just open it up for 24 hours, you'll be a lot better off.
Judas says, my company allows me to work from home 2 days a week. When I work from home, I'm more productive depending on the time of the month.
Why? What's going on with the time of the month?
I don't know. Maybe she's busier at the end of the month than she is in the beginning. I don't have her schedule. What are you asking me for? Donna says, I can tell you the results. If you're self-employed, work from home. If you work for an employer, work at the office. Who can I send my invoice to? That's exactly right.
Yeah,
Carl says, I stand over the shoulders of my staff and scream at them in a German accent. I can get 8 hours.
The emphasis on the German accent is what threw me off there. But anyway.
He said a Hitler accent, actually.
Oh,
Lucky says, coffee and tissue costs when people are in the office. Yeah, that's also something to think about. But I don't know. I mean, we're still talking about this. So to the what is it? The Public Service Commission, guys.
Yeah.
You're a bit slow to the party.
Yes, you are. Like 4 years.
I don't know if you saw this, but NFL fans have suffered frostbite at a record-breaking cold game, and now it's March in North America.
Yep.
A recent NFL game between Kansas City Chiefs and Cleveland Browns turned dangerous for some fans in attendance. Apparently, the game was the coldest in the stadium's history. Temperatures reached minus 20 degrees with wind chill as low as minus 33.
Yes.
Watching a football match. Oof. According to a news report, several fans suffered from frostbite after the game, and some were even requiring amputations.
Oh, my word.
It is important to note that singer Taylor Swift, who was there to support her boyfriend,
Travis Kelce,
yes, watched the game from a luxury suite and was not exposed. Thank God they didn't expose Tay-Tay to the cold weather conditions.
How would she play the guitar?
No, not her. How would her fans react if she had to lose 2 fingers?
I imagine they'd be trying to find the amputated little bit somewhere.
Someone to make a shrine.
Yeah, without a doubt. And then you'd see it on eBay for like $10 million or something stupid like that.
Yeah. Bronwyn says, I'm starting a business from home with 2 children on a small farm. It's very difficult. I have to slap myself all day to get back to work.
Yeah.
You see. Taxi drivers work 4 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day anyway. Extra 6 hours isn't that much more.
Oh, my word. But he's got a point. That is true, actually.
Yeah, I know what you mean, though. And in fact, it was Herman Mashaba, wasn't it, who was in here the other day talking about a 24-hour workday.
Yep.
He says ever since 2020, a lot of these fast food places and garages that used to be open 24/7, they're not anymore.
They're
so
not.
They shut at like 9 at night, and we've never really got back to that.
We really need to, because
So.
If the workday is longer, you've got the opportunity to get more people into work. We alternate via shifts. You know what I mean? I think that would change the unemployment a little bit. I think so.
So it is a Tuesday morning, which means we also get to check in on the window seat with travel.co.za. Now, sometimes we talk about these incredible destinations. Sometimes we talk about the business of travel. Sometimes we talk about things that can go wrong, things that can go really well. We speak to people who've been to incredible places. And this man has been to probably more incredible places than you and I will if we live now. Two more lifetimes.
Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking. But we've had him on the show before, and it is a great pleasure to welcome Claude Vankeirsbilck back to the studio. He's the COO of Tourvest Travel Services. How's it, Claude? How are you, man? Nice to see you.
Thank you very much. You too.
Yeah. So what's been happening? You've been busy. Hell of a start.
Very busy,
to the year.
Yeah, it's been a good start. Thanks, Gareth. We're very blessed. Thank you.
So, Claude, you are also the man who can tell us about things that have to do more with the way that the travel business works. Yeah. Most of us actually have no idea. I mean, people go on, maybe they go to travel.co.za, they book their things, their flights, their accommodation, all this stuff.
All their business trips.
And if it's the business trips, there's sometimes a whole department in a business that deals with all of that stuff. But once that's done, we kind of forget about it. We might tick some little box that says insurance, but there are things like duty of care and risk management that are a big part of this, and it's a massive, massive money spinner in the travel business. What do they mean, and how does it affect ordinary people, and how does it affect companies, and how does it affect the service providers? Because last time you were in here, you told us about some crooked company that had taken people's money. They never got their holidays. And there are a lot of crooks out there.
Yeah, Gareth, some exciting topic, duty of care and travel risk management.
This is very important.
But extremely important. You're right. I mean, the well-being of your employees in most companies is paramount. So really, I mean, within the context of travel, duty of care is the legal obligation to research, plan, and implement a strategy to mitigate the risks involved for employees traveling on business.
Right.
So a company's duty of care will contain a statement of its commitment to care for its employees and how far that extends. So often, you know, the concept of duty of care and risk management are spoken about, you know, together, but they're actually quite different.
Okay.
So duty of care can really be defined as the moral and or legal obligation to ensure the safety or well-being of others.
So in other words, if I decided to send Jack to Syria now.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, how...
If I decided to just book him tickets to Damascus, economy class, he's going to arrive. There's no one going to fetch him at the airport.
He's got a meeting at 8 o'clock the next morning.
He's got a meeting at 8 o'clock the next morning. He is going to arrive in a war zone.
Yeah.
Who knows what's going to happen to him on the ground? And then I'll say to him, you must book your own flight back. There's clearly no duty of care going on
Absolutely.
there. Right?
I mean, unless you're in the security industry and you might be needed there.
Or I'm a psychopath.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But I mean, even if you're needed in the security industry, whatever your business is that's booking you there would make sure that they at least look after these details.
Yeah.
And it's massively important.
And in most companies, it's a massive program that they've designed to ensure the safety. You know, and just for a Mr. Average traveler that's traveling to any country in the world, that kind of duty of care is needed so that you ensure you know where your traveler is or where they are.
Yeah.
What are they doing? Where are they staying? Are they traveling by car, by train? You know, so that you know at any point in time where they may be.
Is it almost like a duty of care that a parent has towards a child?
I think it's exactly the same. I mean, you know, you would apply very similar principles in wanting to know where your travelers are at any time. Because if something happens at that point in time, it could be a terrorist event, right? Which we've seen numerous times. It could be a natural disaster, you know, a tsunami. You can name all those that we've seen before. You want to know where your business travelers are, and you want to be able to assist them when these events occur.
In the horrible instance that, excuse me, that one of those kind of events happen, who's liable at that point in time?
Well, that's where the legal obligations do come in, and it varies from country to country, right? The legalities around that, but it's each organization's obligation to know what those legal obligations are.
So for example, most of these companies that would book through you, they would have a policy in place.
Absolutely.
And that policy would be very detailed. It would go into what happens if, when, where.
They'll have a travel risk management program.
Right.
Absolutely.
Because you don't want, as the company, to have made a bad decision and then the family of that person or that person themselves then comes after you.
Yeah.
So the policy's made clear to people beforehand.
Yes.
But okay, so he's asking whose responsibility is
ultimately it's the organization's responsibility.
Right.
You're sending them to to a meeting or to a conference or whatever, and you need to make sure that they're going to get there safely, they're going to get there in good shape, and that they're going to be able to conduct the business on behalf of the business, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if something goes wrong, again, it's reasonable to expect that it's their obligation to look after them.
And what is the obligation of the travel management company?
So the travel management company plays quite an important role, because if, and I'm assuming here that the travel is booked through a travel management company, they sit with all the data, right? They know exactly at any point in time, within reason, as to where they are at any point in time. So you're going to be able to assist the organization or a company that the organization has employed, an outsourced company, and there are various companies that offer these services, travel risk programs. The travel management company can then provide that data across so that the outsourced company knows exactly where the traveler is. So it really starts with the travel management company in terms of the data, because everything is booked through the travel management company.
What would you, will this cover someone who gets very sick?
Yeah. I mean, that eventuality.
If you were Pravin Gordon and they paid a Sangoma 200,000 to give you constipation, and you're on your flight to London, you've got terrible constipation on the other side, and you can't move.
I mean, there are companies that organizations subcontract, like a company like ISOS, International SOS.
Yeah.
And they will then look after that traveler to ensure that he gets the right medical care. And if needed, repatriated back to South Africa or whichever country he comes from to get the required medical treatment.
I've always wondered about that, because that's going to be like the nightmare, right? You've booked this trip, and maybe it's for business, maybe it's for personal reasons, and you get there and you're immediately like bedridden.
Yep.
Or you hurt yourself, you break a bone or something.
Broke a leg.
Now what are you going to do? Because most of us,
well, I've experienced that myself. And this was before companies used to consider duty of care an important part of business travel.
I heard they just left you in the desert.
No, I went on a trip to Bali in Indonesia to a conference, and I must have caught some sort of bug, and I could not get out of bed, and I was on my own. I mean, yes, I could phone home. It was in the days before cell phones, and really had no one to help me, right?
How long were you down for?
I was down for 3 days. I didn't attend 1 minute of the conference, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, in today's world, you're gonna.
I'm laughing now, but it's a shit thing to happen.
It's not fun. I must be honest. But nowadays, companies who subcontract these organizations, like a company like Riskline or International ISOS, and they actually have remotes with them. You travel with a remote. The minute something goes wrong and you feel like you're in danger or you're ill, you press the remote, and that organization is onto you.
That's incredible.
They call you straight away. I mean, obviously it's easy now with mobile phones, etc. They call you straight away. They assess the risk or the illness, and they just get doctors onto you. They get support structures around you, repatriate you if you need to, etc. So I mean, many of our organizations that we manage from a travel management point of view, have these kind of services that help them, that help their employees to ensure that they're well looked after.
I didn't realize that there were actually organizations that did this all the time, 24/7. International SOS. That's
International
wild.
SOS, Risk Line, to name, and a couple of other Northcote Global Solutions.
Are there specific? I know that there are lists of countries that are considered dangerous to travel to.
Yeah.
And they publish those, they update them all the time, right? So, for example, if you wanted to go to where Donna, one of our listeners here in the comments, she's in Libya at the moment. People wouldn't recommend Libya as like a holiday destination. It's on some kind of list where there are special advisories around what you should and shouldn't do, right?
So, I mean, you know, companies operate in different markets around the world and different countries. So they will assess those risks before any traveler departs. So the obligation from the organization is to say, right, we need you to go. Let's take, for example, Libya. We need you to go to Libya. However, here are the risks that you need to be aware of. You need to make sure that you've read those, understood those. I mean, clarify anything that you need to before you travel, and be very comfortable as an employee that you now want to travel on that trip. Ultimately, it is up to you to travel, right? You
can decide.
You can choose not to go. I mean, we don't know what those consequences could be, but you could choose not to travel. So if you do choose to travel, make sure you're aware of the country and the city you're going to, what the risks are associated, and take it from there. I mean, there are organizations that will have banned countries, right? So the minute a travel request for that country is requested, well, it goes through to the risk and compliance leader of that organization, and he'll turn around or she'll turn around and say, sorry, you're not traveling. You know, it's a banned country.
I'm always keeping my eye on the money. I need to find out who's paying for what and how. Would the costs of all of this be put on the person that's traveling or the company itself?
No. Look, there's insurance that covers that kind of stuff, and certainly medical insurance is important.
Is it possible to go overseas without taking out insurance?
It is possible, but it's a massive risk.
Yeah,
I mean, you want to know what it costs to have one night in a hotel. I'm sorry, in a hospital. And you're going to be quite, a massive cost.
So I mean, it's ticking a little box for some people, right? Because they leave and then they don't think about it, and they go, okay, well, I don't need this. And then
look, if you're joining a company, let's say you're a new joiner in a company, or you're looking to join a company, and you know that your job or your role is going to entail travel, and particularly international travel, and maybe even African travel. Well, best you have a look at their travel risk program before you join that company. You know,
there we go.
Those are the kind of things. Instead of just looking at, okay, this is how much going to be paid.
Dear Claude, we're going to send you to some really cuck place. You're going to get all kinds of bugs. You're going to come back with dysentery, and then it's your problem.
A good weight loss program. I mean,
what's the worst story you've heard about this? Like people who've died on a flight, and
I mean, look, there's all those kind of things, but I think the most common is falling ill. You know, you pick up a bug, you pick up some sort of infection or whatever it is, and
Ebola virus,
and it's those sort of things that are most common. You know, especially in business travel. I mean.
Here's something interesting. Slippery Pickle says, what if I were planning to go to Myanmar? What would my insurance cost? The hotel costs there are quite cheap. I mean, does it vary depending on the risk?
I mean, insurance companies are very clever people. Let's be honest. They look at the various countries, they assess the risks and then the associated costs. You know.
What about this one from Bebop Williams? Says there is a very bad relationship between airlines and TMCs, where airlines constantly penalize them through debit memos. ITA have never been resolved by the leaders of the industry. So what's that all about? Is that someone who knows?
Gareth, look, I mean, that's way off the topic of duty of care and risk management. But we do have, when a travel agent either makes an error knowingly or not, and let's say you've booked an economy class, a cheap economy class ticket, and you might have made an error on that particular booking, an airline is entitled to, through what they call an IATA resolution, to charge the travel management company the correct fare, right, for that particular trip, and there's no discussion. It's just a charge that comes back, and you as the travel agent can then appeal that charge. And if you're in the right, and if you've really done the right things, you can maybe have that reversed, right? But that's I mean that.
Okay, well,
it's off topic.
I know
completely.
you can answer almost any questions. That's why I threw it. All right. Well, listen. Let's just be aware of this stuff. Let's remember that there are risks, like everything. You know, there's a risk every time you get into your car. But that's why you need insurance.
But key is also making sure that you use a travel agency, number one, when you're booking, that your travel agency understands what duty of care means and risk management means. Do they have products that can support an organization with their risk management policies? And, you know, all the data's there. So if you're booking online yourself, no one knows who and where you are, right? So when you need help, you're likely going to try and speak to a hotel or someone in a hotel or someone in an airline. Try finding an airline call center today. You're probably not going to last with your virus that you just picked up before that call gets answered, you know. So very important to choose companies like ourselves that can manage your travel program.
And do you have people who can answer questions if people aren't sure about this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
we specialize. We specialize in those kind of programs, right? That's the value that a travel management company brings, and the technology that we add to solutions to manage those kind of programs. And then if it's a lot more intricate and more detailed, then we will find a company that specializes and has as it at its core, you know, risk management and travel duty of care programs.
That's very good to know. So Claude is the COO of Tourvest Travel Services. Of course, we've done lots of interesting stuff, and we've done all the fun stuff, and we thought it was probably necessary for you to know some of this stuff as well.
Serious stuff,
especially if you're the person at a company who's doing all the corporate bookings. If you're somebody who's thinking about those incentive trips this year, you got to be aware of this stuff, because you don't want to end up with a whole lot of problems down the way and no solutions. So there we go. If you need more information, you can go along to TTS. We'll post all the links in the show notes, and you can also find out more by going to cliffcentral.com. There's a whole page of all of our window seats, which have been going for a little while now, so you can find out more on that, or book your trips through travel.co.za. Very good. Thanks, Claude.
Cheers. Thanks very much,
Nice to
Gareth.
see you, man.
Nice to see you
Awesome.
again. Thank you.
Right. Well, we've got Democracy 101 coming up in a short while. That's going to be exciting, because we're going to be talking to Lukhona Mnguni, who is, of course, from the Rivonia Circle and currently is doing a PhD in political science. So we've got some interesting things to ask Lukhona about what happens with regard to elections, voter apathy,
that kind
loads
of
of interesting stuff. Also, the candidate lists that were leaked this week. What's that all about? The Multiparty Charter, whether they should be asking for election observers, which some people were hot under the collar about yesterday.
Yeah.
Is there a threat to the integrity of the election? Despite the fact that you and I have now spoken to 3 different people from the IEC.
Yep.
All of whom I think have done a really good job of explaining
Yes,
what they do. They don't seem to me to be crooks.
Not at all.
They know what they're doing. But there are still lots of people going, but the integrity of the election. So maybe we'll ask someone who's not in the IEC to evaluate that for us.
Yeah. And look, at least we were fortunate enough to be in a position to ask questions. And all of the people that tuned in to those interviews, I imagine those people don't have a problem with the IEC. I think it's the most uninformed people that are making these things up. You know what I mean?
Right. No, it's like the same people who complain about something but never actually do anything about it.
Yep.
It's so terrible, but I'm just going to sit here and moan about it. 31 senior ANC leaders will not be returning to Parliament. Here's an interesting topic for discussion this morning. Making a significant change in the party's leadership includes prominent figures like Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, Pravin Gordhan, Naledi Pandor. These are all people who are leaving office. And the ANC has acknowledged the contributions of these leaders to the party who have served in various leadership positions over the years. The departure of these people from Parliament is likely to lead to speculation about the future direction of the ANC, particularly as they prepare for the election. It will be interesting to see who they put forward as replacements for these more experienced leaders, whether the party can maintain its parliamentary majority.
You know, I feel like experienced in this paragraph just means they were there. You know what I mean? They were front and center to see what was going on.
Yeah.
Like, I was there.
Absolutely.
And this comes like maybe 10 years too late. Hearing that
I don't
there's
think
this
I don't think we're
somewhat
gonna miss.
exodus.
Yeah, you're gonna miss anything from the experience of having Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma and
or
Pravin
Pravin Gordhan.
No, I'm not gonna miss them either.
You know what I mean?
Good luck.
Mr. William Madisha made his feelings clear about Naledi
Hong,
Hong, Hong. I think they should have stopped back then already. But I don't know. Like the ANC is the weirdest organization to me, because it seems like every time you expect them to do the right thing, they do the complete opposite. And when you're like, you know what, fuck it, it's fine, I give up. That's when they show up and be like, okay, we are bringing in changes from the top to the bottom. It's like, guys,
Mapelo in the comments says we should ask the Russians to help observe our election. They're the most trustworthy people we can find, right?
Huh? And if anyone has a problem with what the Russians decide to tell us,
too bad. You'll just get killed.
Yeah, you'll
in a Siberian prison camp.
Yeah.
You want to know what the future of the taxi industry looks like. Now, I've never thought about this, because as far as I can tell, like, South Africa is a very strange place. The taxi business is never going to go anywhere.
Yeah. But it has to evolve.
But well,
and I'll tell you why.
Better taxis.
Yeah, well, first, I mean, forgetting the obvious, right?
We're not talking about an industry that wants to change. I mean,
no. It has to.
These are the guys who complain when Uber comes to South Africa, when Bolt and Lyft and all of those.
I was actually thinking about those things when I was.
They don't want any change.
They don't, but they have to, because like e-hailing has disrupted a lot of taxi operations, if I can put it that way. And to the point whereby there's a lot of these guys that drive Bolt and Uber and whatnot. They know that there's certain places that just
you can't
go to, right?
Because the taxi buses and the taxi drivers will kill you,
right? But slowly, that is changing, especially amongst the customers rather than just the drivers, right? It's become a thing of, wait, this is my money. I am going to choose to spend it with whoever I choose to spend it with, which makes me wonder if it is time for the public in large to put a bit more pressure on the taxi associations. Because, I mean, what happened in Ekurhuleni last week?
How do we do that?
How do we do that? We keep our money. Long story short.
Don't use the taxis.
Just, give them a middle finger. We catch a bus. We catch a lift with somebody. I think for the first time, it would be interesting to see how the taxi associations would react to the public striking against
You're going to war with these guys. You must watch out.
Let's do it.
Just watch out, Jack McLean.
No, and I'm saying, and I bring this up because, as you know, we've done a couple of things with Halfway Toyota, and they're going to help us facilitate some of these conversations with the taxi industry
about how they should be changing for the future,
or at least for us to get a deeper understanding of why they behave the way they do.
You see, I find the taxi industry in South Africa fascinating.
I don't
care who says that that's it's not. You're not paying attention. It's like the most incredible thing. And you saw it during those riots in KZN with a year and a half ago now. Because who came to the rescue? Taxi
industry. Yep.
Taxi industry.
And when you think about the sheer number of people that they move from one place to another on a daily basis. So,
and we don't really have a public transport infrastructure to speak of.
No, we really don't.
You know, we can talk a little bit about Ria Vaya buses, and we could talk a little bit about the Gautrain and all that stuff, but that's not how the majority of people in this country get around.
It's not. And I was also thinking about how the taxi drivers themselves, like one of the comments mentioned that they're up at 4 a.m. and all of this stuff. Look, I've got friends who I grew up with who are taxi drivers. And let me tell you something. It is more often than not a thankless job because of all the issues we have with how they drive on our roads. But we often don't consider the fact that every taxi driver is given a certain amount that they have to hit every single day. Right? So For argument's sake, it could be 700 Rand for one taxi driver every day. Anything you make above that is what you keep. But we don't consider the fact that this person needs to pour petrol into this car. If anything happens to the car, he will be held responsible for the repairs onto it. So they've got all of these things coming in every direction, which is why I brought up the 24 hours thing earlier on. Because if they work in shifts and the economy is running 24 hours a day, we would have less people traveling during the day. Right. So traffic would be a lot easier to deal with.
And we wouldn't have such tired drivers.
Exactly. And they wouldn't have to, they wouldn't feel the need to drive in the yellow lane just so they can drop off that load so that they can make their way back to make the 700 Rand that they need to make for that day.
Sam comes into the comments and says, "Morning, I'm late. What did I miss?" Oh. Sorry. A whole hour. Pretty much a whole hour.
Where do we even start?
Lucky Mutlapeng says, Santaco have their own e-hailing service called Taxi. I saw one this weekend, so they're trying to keep up.
They're trying to keep up.
Well,
it's an attempt, I guess.
How do you book a Bajaj? That's one thing I haven't worked out yet.
I don't know. I think they're on Bolt or something like that.
Oh, is that what?
Yeah. Do you know, I actually got in one the other day. It's the strangest feeling ever. Like,
you got into one?
Yeah, I have. And it feels like you are in the seat of, what do they call those little, not a carousel, man. You know those spinning
those
seashells
bumper car type
yeah,
things,
yeah, that's what it feels like. You are in you don't feel like you're safe at all in that thing. It feels like if a strong enough gust of wind shows up, like you are absolutely screwed. It's crazy.
Cheap though.
It is.
And therefore for some people maybe worthwhile.
I think
I wouldn't be surprised if they're stealing a bit of taxi business.
Yeah, but like 2 passengers at a time.
And
really?
Short distances.
Like really short distances.
Yeah, not long distances. Listen, there are a lot of them on the road. I see them every day.
And I feel like they're so out of place in this country. They would have been so much better off in like India or like...
Sure.
You get what I mean?
Don't underestimate the fact that a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, we didn't have one on the road. Now,
at all. Yeah.
Now you see them all the time.
Yeah.
I know that in Cape Town, they don't have them at all. So the Cape Townians don't know what we're talking about when we talk about this, but it's a real thing. And if you haven't seen them in Joburg, then
it's a tin
you
can
must be
on
living
wheels.
under a rock. Yeah, well, you can criticize it, and they do look ridiculous, but
they do.
People are using them.
Yes, they are. And what I found absolutely hilarious about being inside one of those things, the gears are so funny. Like, you know how we have gears that are like 1, 2, 3. You know what I mean? There's just straight up and down.
Oh, really?
You go from gear 1 to neutral to gear 2, then gear 3, then gear 4. It is hilarious.
I haven't seen one. I haven't been in one. I need to get into one.
Yeah, you should.
Slippery Pickle says, with the heat that we've had this week, I'm inclined to work at night. I agree. Jesus, yesterday, I could not do anything. It was so goddamn hot. Now, I don't have aircon in my house, and I'm not going to put that in. So last night, I managed to get to sleep eventually.
Yeah.
But this heat is just unbelievable. It's stifling. Can't do anything. Apparently, Wednesday is going to be the hottest day of all.
Really?
Yeah, tomorrow. So
there've been a couple of heat wave.
They say that tomorrow's the last and worst day of this heat wave. Okay. I don't know if there are any more coming. Don't look at me. I'm not the Weather Bureau. That's all I've got. All I've got is tomorrow is going to be very hot.
No, but I mean, like when you say of this, it means like there might just be another one down the line. And isn't March when we're supposed to be stepping into autumn? Like what is going on right now?
You would think so. You would think by now things are starting to get cooler. That's why I read that story about that Taylor Swift thing in Kansas City.
Yep.
I mean, minus 33 with a wind chill.
That is nuts.
I think there were some people yesterday going, please bring me some of that.
Yeah. Can we have a few snowflakes?
Careful what you wish for, because you're going to miss this heat when winter's here.
Yeah. And if this summer is any indication, perhaps winter might just be as bad as this summer was hot. So we don't know.
Let's hope not. Okay, it's 7 o'clock. We'll be back in a moment with Democracy 101. Don't go anywhere. It's a busy morning on cliffcentral.com. Big thank you to Claude for popping in for the window seat. And we've got Lukhona coming in just a moment or two to talk a little bit about democracy and about the elections and about what you need to know. And also, we'll talk voter apathy, which is the last time we had him on. Yeah. Why are so many people still, despite the stakes being so high, how much worse must their lives get before they'll eventually get up off their asses and go and vote? We'll find out. We'll see how many people do stay away and couldn't care less. And you know what? Like by now, those people we just got to give up on, don't you think? Nothing else. What else are we meant to do for them?
Yeah, it's amen.
Back in a second.
This week on the Auto Trader podcast.
This past week we did a super cool Tuesday post, right, where we pitted the two premier sort of luxury sports SUVs right now, which was the AMG GLE 63S versus the X6M. I don't know if either of you have driven those cars as of yet.
Previous gen models. The new ones, no, but I know exactly where my money's going if it was my 3 million rand.
Yeah.
What, the X6 or the Mercedes AMG?
Oh, no, it's going to be the GLC all the way.
Really?
Dude, I do not like the way the X6 is, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, of course.
I don't like the way it looks.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Any sort of...
Well, BMX6 drivers usually tend to put me off. So,
yeah.
Catch us every Monday at 9 a.m. on YouTube and on autotrader.co.za.
All right. It is Tuesday, the 12th of March. CliffCentral.com and the Real Network. We're doing a little transition as we go into something new. But Democracy 101 is here this morning, which, of course, is brought to you by the Podcast Party. If you're confused about any of this, go along to the website and you'll see all of the different things that we're doing in the run-up to these elections. Jack Motlanthe is my co-host here this morning. We've been talking to some very interesting people over the last few weeks, people who are intimately involved with making sure that our election is free and fair. We've been talking to people who are commentators from various backgrounds about research that they've done with respect to where they think the election is going to go. People like Ray Hartley, who we had on not so long ago, published his Brenthurst research just this week, and Frans Cronje just a couple of weeks ago, who said some very interesting things. The big, I suppose you could call it wild card, is Jacob Zuma's MK party, because that's the part that no one had foreseen. That's the part that I think is going to create some very interesting, destabilizing and variant factors around what could happen in the upcoming election. So we'll talk about that a little bit. But I think two of the big stories this week that everyone's talking about. First one, and we'll get to speak to Lukhona in just a moment or two, but this is a big story. It's about the IEC identifying an individual believed to have leaked the ANC and controversies party candidate lists using the commission's internal systems. So apparently 2 lists started circulating on social media on Friday already. I only saw them on Saturday, but they were circulated hours after they were submitted by the parties. The IEC said its preliminary investigation shows that the documents were generated from a workstation in its headquarters before they were deleted. Very suspicious. So someone who works there found these things online,
right,
and decided they were going to print them or send them to someone else. And from there, the wildfire spread.
But I still don't get what the train smash is, because
I don't understand.
they were going to release them anyway.
So yeah, why is it a big deal?
Why?
And the party themselves put the lists together. So it's not like someone else put your party list together.
No.
So who are you worried about upsetting with these lists?
I mean, I don't get it. Like,
what's the problem?
Why was it cloaked in secrecy to begin with?
Have you seen the lists?
I've seen a couple. I've seen a couple of them.
Any comments?
And I saw a bunch of names that I didn't recognize on
Pretty
a lot
much
of these lists. What I found a little interesting was the fact that Jacob Zuma sits at number 1 on the MK list,
even though he cannot technically run as a candidate.
Yeah. So it's like,
so he's number 1 on the list.
What are we doing?
But he won't be president if the if the MK party suddenly got enough votes to be the number 1 party in the country. They got the majority. Let's just say they got more than everyone else, because that's all you need now.
Yeah.
They're all going to be messing around 30-40% if they're lucky.
Yeah.
20-30% if they're less lucky. The number 1 party will be able to decide who the president is. Now, if it's the MK party, it can't be Jacob Zuma, because he's actually barred from being a candidate. So I didn't see who number 2 was, but I wouldn't have recognized number 2 if they jumped out of my Rice Krispies this morning.
Yeah. Yep.
Right?
And I will say this. Jacob Zuma has proven to be somewhat of a political shapeshifter, if I can put it that way, because he somehow always finds to, like, he puts himself in really advantageous situations a lot of the time because
he's
of how
an opportunist.
Because of how he moves.
Definitely.
So let's just say MK wins a sizable number of votes. I think he's going to be the chess player he's always been and move around the pieces to ultimately benefit him and his maybe 10 loyal supporters within the MK. But I think what will be interesting is if the EFF and the MK somehow work together as a coalition.
That's probably what will happen.
Because from all the political analysts and all the people that are a lot more educated on the subject than I am, it is pretty clear that KZN is no longer going to be an ANC province.
Yeah, which is also,
not by a long shot.
I mean, that's going to be the first time in a long time.
Very long time. And, because of the leadership vacuum that is in the in KZN, you know what I mean? The king is not a person that is held in pretty high regard by the people in that province.
Sure.
So, Jacob Zuma could potentially walk in there and,
it's a kingmaker.
Yeah.
Sure.
And the Cape Independence was a stupid idea, but who knows? KZN could be the province that could actually somewhat get it done.
It's amazing. The MK party have also said if we're not on the ballot, we will prevent the election from taking place.
Yeah.
That's a direct threat to election integrity.
Who's that Indian gentleman who's been
he's loud and he's got a lot to say.
That guy. I forgot his name.
Don't ask me.
Forgot his name. And he was like, if the MK is not done, he was like, my guy, I need you to sit down because...
Listen, since we're talking democracy, I've just got to bring up Haiti quickly because I'm not sure if you've seen what's been happening in Haiti. It is an absolute disaster, and not a natural disaster, an unnatural disaster.
Yep.
I saw some stories yesterday about what's going on in Haiti, and I have to say it's just disturbing.
It is.
There's like this leader of Haiti called Barbecue. Okay. Have you heard about this? Wait a second. I took a screenshot of this yesterday.
That thug.
Listen to this. This guy's name is Barbecue. I kid you not.
Mm-hmm.
Haiti gang leader Jimmy Cherizier, who's also called Barbecue, said that if Haiti's prime minister, Ariel Henry, doesn't resign, Haiti will have a genocide. Barbecue went on. I'm sorry, you got to take this seriously. Barbecue went on to say that if the prime minister insists on staying in power, they can all expect a civil war. And there's cannibalism back on the menu in Haiti.
My God.
Yes, fascinating.
Can you imagine being threatened by a person named Barbecue?
Just in case you hadn't anticipated this in 2024. We've already had so much to talk about. But now this guy called Barbecue, who is leading a gang of people who, among other things, are eating people. Great.
Yeah.
Haiti's just amazing. So democracy, is it the best system? What did Churchill say? It's the best of the worst options. I'm paraphrasing.
I think that is the most apt description at this point, because wow.
All right, well, let's welcome someone who actually knows what he's talking about here. He's not just speculating wildly like we are. Lukhona Mnguni is a governance, politics, and development specialist. He's currently serving as the acting executive director and head of policy and research at Rivonia Circle. It's good to see you, Lukhona. How are you?
No,
you
good. Good morning, Gareth.
Nice to see you again.
Good morning, guys.
Yeah.
No. I'm awake at least. It's one of those times.
No comments about barbecue in Haiti?
No. I mean, barbecue is a household spice, so you must respect barbecue.
Yes. You don't want any of that smoke.
Any home that loves its meat has barbecue.
Yeah,
for sure. Need those herbs and spices, but this guy's a little bit too spicy.
Too spicy for your liking.
So, Lukhona, last time we had you on, we talked about voter apathy.
Yeah.
And in the run-up to these elections now, we've got a record number of people registered. First of all, just to pick up on where we left off with you last time we had you on, how do you feel about that? Do you think that the registration drive has been a success? Are you feeling like there's a change in particularly young South Africans' point of view about the importance of elections?
Look, I mean, it's been a while since we last spoke, but I think two things are becoming quite evident for me. Is one, there is an appetite for change, but there's no momentum for change. Okay.
And people are just sitting.
So people
they're hungry, but they're not willing to get up.
Yeah, people would love to see change. I think they have not taken the belief that the vote is a mechanism that is truly available to them to effect the change. And that's where I see the lack of momentum for change. So are people going to go out in numbers and vote and, reclaim democracy and assert their authority through the vote? That really stands to be seen. I'm still not convinced that we're gonna have this super high turnout. I mean, of course, we've got over 27 million people on the voters roll now, which is the highest number that is set there since 1994. But if you look relative to the population size, we still have cohorts of the population that are extremely underregistered, like your 17 to 18, 19 to 25. Registration rates get better after 25. And I know that, Gareth, yesterday when the IEC had its briefing at 6 p.m., and there was this breakdown of the voting numbers, and the CEO of the IEC talking effectively to being impressed by the focus they've had on 18 to 39 year olds. But what is unfortunate about that is once you club the 18 to 39, you miss the story of the missing but still lower participation rates between 18 and 25.
All right, let me ask you this, because I don't know what else we have to do to get young people in this country to realize that this is their opportunity to purchase a piece of their own future.
You've got to give them.
It's like, come on, guys. I mean, we're leading the horse to water, and the water's great, and the horse is thirsty, but it's still not drinking. Like, what's missing here?
I think we live in a society where young people don't have enough of a stake to actually view their participation. I must be careful how I phrase this. Where they don't view their participation in voting as directly impactful on them. And I keep saying my observation.
But I mean, how much do you need to do to these people? I mean, they don't have jobs because of the economic conditions in the country, which is largely as a result of labor policies and lack of foreign investment and the job market that shrinks and the economy that is not growing. I don't know how else to make that clear. Power, you go home and there's no electricity.
So, Gareth, when you talk to some people, particularly on focus groups, it's quite interesting. It's this thing that Sizwe Mpofu-Walsh in his first book wrote about gradualism, and gradualism being that people await their turn. You believe that your turn is still coming. That yes, I may be unemployed today, but I'm hopeful that my turn is coming. And I think once you start hitting your mid-20s, you start feeling the pressure of the state not delivering for you. Because remember, when you leave school, whether you leave high school after matric, you think that there might be an opportunity to find work. You think that there might be an opportunity to further your studies and so on. And so you keep, there's a window of gradualism, so waiting your turn. And then that window starts closing and you realize, actually, you know what, I mean, I need to think about things differently and start asking penetrating questions about the state. And I also think that young people, as they in their earlier stages where they are permitted to be voters, they've got other forms of expressing themselves, and they've got other priorities that take up their time rather than electoral politics. Because let's face the truth, even those of us who have been voting at every turn that we have had,
we also feel frustrated.
We haven't felt the material bearing of the power of our vote, and it's difficult to then convince others to yeah, sure, come vote, but they keep asking for what? Because I mean, one person said we're doing an event as the Rivonia Circle, and they said, I'm not sure if I said this last time, Gareth, but they said, when I go to a furniture shop, I have a guarantee and warranty, but my vote has no guarantee or warranty. And I thought that was quite interesting from a young person.
Like I've spent a couple of days and weeks interviewing young people on the streets, like as part of one of our initiatives called VVIP. And it became alarmingly apparent to me that it's not necessarily that people don't want to vote just in J. It seems as if a lot of people actually understand just how much of a mammoth task it is to bring about some level of change, whether it be on a local level or on the macro level or the micro level. You understand? So is it the culture that has developed in this country, how much of a role does it play, do you think, in how people...
What part of the culture?
Like, what I mean is this, right? So South Africa, a lot of South Africans don't need to be told what is wrong in the country, right? And when they think about how about going to fix that, it's a lot of people realize that it's a tall order.
Yeah, but you got to start somewhere.
Sure. Now, when we look at it in its totality, people look at things in their totality and they think to themselves, how is it possible that I could even bring about the smallest amount of change in the middle of all of this stuff?
Yeah.
And it seems to be a part of everyday culture that people look at things and think, no, there's no possible way that I can bring about change over there.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, there's that one, which is why I said there's an appetite for change, because that's exactly what you are describing. But there's no momentum for change because people are also looking, where is this change going to come from?
Right.
And one of the things that has completely happened is that people have really lost trust in politicians. It doesn't matter which T-shirt they're wearing. It's blue, red, yellow, green, white, black, it doesn't matter. The politician has lost currency. And so one of the things that people say is, you'll have a focus group with people for about 2 hours and they're harping on change. The country is going in the wrong direction. But when presented with, voting choices, it's like, no, I better stick with the devil that I know. because the devil that I don't know, I am not sure what it's going to come to office and do. And of course, we know sometimes what the devils that we don't know do. They give us Kwamanda in the city of Johannesburg as so-called mayor. Really, there's no mayor in the city of Johannesburg. And they give us chaos in the city of Ekurhuleni, where they even start questioning, the Auditor General, and the audit is not out, and they get downgraded, and they question that too, and so on. So, and these are now politicians from other parties and not the African National Congress per se. And people look around and they say, well, what reason do I have to trust that the other guys are going to do any better when they come to office?
So we've got two things going on here. We've got that lack of trust in politicians, which I think is a very important part of this, and we have to take that seriously. And we'll look at that with respect to these candidate lists. I think that's interesting. I mean, is there anyone on those candidate lists that's jumping out at you and screaming, leadership, leadership? Anyway, we'll look at that in a second. But the other thing is, and this is why I'm sorry to harp on this too, but okay, now we've given young people an opportunity to register. You said there's appetite, but no momentum. It's the same as like, these are the same people who have no momentum to do anything but go on social media and like scroll. So we've got to just accept some of these people are just going to be left out until, as you put it, Lukhona, that when they eventually get their shit together somewhere in the mid-20s, they're going to realize it's time to take part.
Yeah.
So we've got to just wait for those people to get to the point where they are at that stage. Stop pandering to the 18-year-olds. Yep. They're not interested. There's no political parties, no leader in any political party who knows how to.
Mm-hmm.
So leave them behind. Don't worry about them. You don't see them in the queue on Voters' Day? Too bad. We've tried.
Look, I mean, you never want to give up on anybody because, as they would say, there's no recycling bin for people.
Yeah.
But I think it is.
They'll get there one day.
No, absolutely, they'll get there, and some of them are there, right? Some of them are super active, highly active in student politics around the many campuses, across the country, where they start getting involved. They form not just only political organizations to contest political power in the form of SRCs, but also independent, bodies. I mean, a number of some of the public voices we now have are actually born out of that student movement. I mean, I'd even think of somebody such as, Mbuyiseni Ndlozi of the EFF when we were at WITS. He was already in the SRC with the likes of MEC Mbalihlophe in Gauteng province. So there's a long history of a pipeline of young people who have come through the ranks of student politics and activism. So I think that there is a good story to be told. The question is, how do you imagine it in volume? The only form, and again, I mean, because the vote is something that comes every 5 years, people are getting a bit frustrated with it. And I'll go back to this thing of a furniture shop having a guarantee and a vote not having a guarantee, is the sense that in between elections, how much power do I actually have as a voter? And I think that's another thing that we need to talk about, is what is it that we need to cultivate? And at the Rivonia Circle, we are constantly trying to think of innovative ways to continuously bring people closer to democracy in conversation with power, in conversation with democracy. Because if we don't do that, then of course we will lose the essence of the importance of democracy. It will almost be like a ritual, like going to church every Sunday.
Right.
But you've actually lost the connection of the essence of, why you go to church.
It's like exercising the muscle.
Yeah. So yeah, it's like that kind of. But look, I mean, yes, indeed, I often say to politicians when I advise them, because politicians are always frustrated, how do we get young people to vote for us? I'm like, I'd spend less time and resources, to be quite honest, at the strategic level, trying to get the vote out from 20-year-olds, and spend more time on people who previously voted but have become disaffected and are not willing to turn out, because there's a higher rate of possibly turning them out than people who are first-time voters.
Who benefits from less people coming to the polls?
The ANC.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Now, you mentioned something just now, like you were talking about how, or at least you alluded to what it's basically the vote being the first step somewhat in how individuals interact with democracy moving forward. Have we done a good or bad job in educating South Africans in mass as to how democracy actually works? Because I'm of the opinion that the first thing you do is vote. It's not the only thing. Like there's a bunch of other things that you need to do after that. Like your vote comes with a specific responsibility. And I'm not sure as South Africa from 94, I'm not sure if we've done a good enough job of educating one another about how democracy works.
No, look, I think that's a fair point. In fact, you're reminding me. So over the weekend, I put up a tweet which actually traveled more than I thought it would. So I was asking people about their voting history, and I was sharing my voting history, and I was being called all sorts of things. I was being accused of infidelity with my vote, because I've voted for COPE, I've voted for the EFF, I've voted for Action SA, I've voted for the National Freedom Party in KZN in the 2011 local government elections, and I've voted for the UDM in the last national election. So, I mean, for me, in the first instance, is to plant in the heads of people that the vote can really be a mobile thing that you deploy strategically given where the conversation is during a particular election. And some people seem to take the view that what we should be celebrating is consistency of voting for the same political party. It's good for political parties to have loyalists, but it's probably even much better for the country to have loyalists who can change their vote when the political party is no longer, acting properly, deploying the right people, as Gareth was talking about the list, having the kind of policy focus that is responsive to the demands of the day. And thirdly, just giving a sense of believability that, that organization will do that which it says it is committed to do. And I think before we even go beyond what happens between the vote is how strategic is this vote? And if you keep throwing it where you no longer have belief, you are no longer doing yourself service, and nor are you doing the country service.
You may as well not have registered.
You need to be always open to the idea that you can change your vote. You can vote differently. I think that's the first important thing. Then, of course, in between elections, there are all the various instruments, but it's a bit of labor to interact with some of them. I mean, all of us have an opportunity to make comment on any law before it is passed. Sometimes we even end up in court about some of the laws, just like now we did in the Constitutional Court on the issue of signature requirements for underrepresented political parties, because at times the establishment and incumbent parties try and legislate competition out and do self-preservation. I mean, it's a funny thing, because the assumption with this requirement for parties to show some level of support is that previous support of 5 years ago is still consistent and demonstrable. I can tell you now, there are political parties who would struggle, who are represented in parliament, who would struggle to get these signatures that are required of unrepresented parties in all provinces. And they only have to be represented to gain access to the ballot if they've paid the deposit and submitted their candidates. Right. But that's legislating competition out, because you can't tell me that the Congress of the People, which I've voted for before, that they are still as strong or stronger than Action SA.
They couldn't get 10,000.
So we had an ample opportunity to interact with that legislative process, which we did. Some of us rallied society, but when the politicians legislate badly, then you have to go to court, which is even more expensive a task to do. And that's how countries get run badly, is because the politicians know it's not cheap money to go and challenge a piece of legislation in court. Lawyers are expensive and time is expensive. But I think we still have a long way to go in terms of educating people about democracy, about changes that are coming. One of the things that I'm exceedingly worried about in this upcoming election are the what I call the new introductions. So the signatures were one, and we didn't do enough to educate society to say, Gareth, don't be alarmed if a party asks you for your ID number and signature, because they really need that if they are going to be on the ballot. It doesn't mean you are voting for them, but you are giving them a chance to be on the ballot. Secondly, I'm sure you are aware now, we will have 3 ballot papers, because we are going to be seeing independent candidates, contest an election for the first time since 1994. And what does that mean in terms of the tiering of the 3 ballot papers? 1 is for the provincial legislature, 2 are for the National Assembly. The National Assembly seats have always been divided into 2. 200 in what we call compensatory lists, so that's proportional representation. 200 on a version of constituency-based, which is not really constituency-based, but it's another fight that we are still engaged with. But it is to say the province is a constituency, and an independent candidate like Zaki Ahmad in the Western Cape will probably stand on that regional ballot for people to take him to parliament, but we'll be contesting against political parties. It's a whole schlep that we are still dealing with. But the last introduction, which I think is going to be even more exhausting for people, is that for the first time, the IEC is saying, if you are going to vote outside of your voting district, you must give notice to the IEC ahead of time. You remember in the past, you could literally, even if you are outside the province in which you are registered, still get access to the national ballot and vote nationally. Now, over 1 million people have been voting outside of their voting districts at every election since 1994. And I worry that some people might not get to hear this enough, that, you know, and I think in the election timetable, it's the 17th of May. By the 17th of May, you must have notified the IEC where you will be on the 29th of May, which I think is a bit, it's a stretch too far to know exactly whether you will be inside.
Some people don't know where they're going to be tomorrow.
Some people's lives don't flow like that. Some people's lives don't flow like that.
You brought up something interesting just now. I mean, I remember when we had our first election and people didn't even want to say who they wanted to vote for. I remember it was your vote, your seat. Luckily, I think we've got to a point, and I do think it's a part of the maturation of democracy, where people now will say, and I'm like you, embarrassed to admit that I voted for a lot of parties that have really let me down over the past. And at least I have a clear conscience that I shared that vote, and it wasn't a big deal to me. What was a big deal is that the journey that came afterwards was that I had to admit that I was wrong to have trusted them with my vote. And we all learn these lessons.
Absolutely.
But this is the most interesting part of it now, not the registration or trying to get people to take part in the preamble. Because now, and I saw Herman Mashaba on TV last night talking about actual policy things, like he wants to get rid of the deputy ministers, which is, I think, something a lot of South Africans would say, yes, absolutely. A lot of people go, well, they're being paid too much. So he said, we're going to cut their pay.
That's
in
another
half.
one.
Another good one. Now we're starting to hear ideas, and we're starting to see, policies from the EFF about open borders and how are we part of Africa or not part of Africa. And these are conversations that we should be having.
Absolutely.
It's not just rhetoric about, I don't like him because he once lied to me when we were in the ANC together. And I don't like him because he's going to these people and telling them behind my back. You hear all this stuff. And actually, as you said earlier, we don't really care about politicians. We're not actually interested in them. We don't trust them. We don't like them. They just are what we have. So we must make the best of a bad bunch. So what do you think these candidate lists have to do with the elections in terms of what people how it might change their minds when they see who the party prioritizes? Because we don't have a constituency-based system. We have a party list system.
Absolutely.
And therefore, these lists are important because these are the people who will be put in charge if that party gets your vote.
No, certainly, Gareth. I mean, in the first instance, I think much of the politicking around elections, you're talking about manifestos, now candidate lists. There's only just a minority of us who are going to scrutinize and interrogate some of those lists. The majority of people will make their decision in terms of what they see, the look and feel, how the party or leader makes them feel, and
personality politics.
Personality politics. I was trying to make somebody understand why there's a gravitation towards MK party. And this interview, I was very frustrated with me because they don't like Jacob Zuma. I said it's not about whether we like Jacob Zuma or not, but we keep saying Jacob Zuma has charisma. He's a charismatic politician. So that must count for something. It's an ingredient that not all people who get into politics, have. And it works for you, whether you are good or bad, it sustains you and gives you some mileage. Now, when you interrogate some of those lists, I mean, the leaked lists, for example, from the ANC, which the ANC has now made its list public.
Both of us were confused about that, by the way. Has there ever been a requirement that these lists be hidden? Because surely...
No, but we're still in the window period where the IEC, so what the IEC does, the submission of the list, and then the IEC interrogates the list and then is able to go back to parties and say, you are non-compliant on these particular candidates. Please give us the requisite...
Because they're crooks, they're not allowed to actually run.
Please give us the requisite information. And then once that has happened, the lists are actually published by the IEC for public scrutiny, and that will be on the 10th of April. So on the 10th of April, the public will have the opportunity to interrogate all the lists of parties that are now eligible to be on the ballot, and there will be an opportunity for people to object to any of the names that may be on that list. For whatever reasons people may wish to object for, and then the IEC will look at the objections, assess them, and whether or not they pass. If the objection passes, the party will be notified, and that candidate may be withdrawn from the list. But I think, I mean, it's one thing. So the lists that are always more exciting are ANC lists, because generally we know more of the ANC people than people from other parties.
I don't know any people on any of the party lists beyond like number 10.
Yeah.
So, except the ANC.
Well, except the ANC list. I mean, that's why I keep saying to people, I mean, the ANC is a very difficult, beast to tackle, if we are to be honest, because the ANC can have parallel events in 30 different communities, because in actual fact, they have easily 30 people that they can deploy to any community who are known in that community. Whether they are liked or not, or they are thrown with tomatoes or not, that's different. But people will come. Yeah, they'll come to see Naledi Pando, they'll come to see Kwede Mantashe, they'll come to see Malusi Kigaba, they'll come, whatever you mention it. But I mean, I think what is interesting, I mean, this time around, particularly with the ANC list, if we just stick there for a second, is that there is an interesting, return of some people. Clearly, they are still rooted within the organization. They are seen as, leaders in their own rights. The likes of Malusi Kigaba featuring quite highly.
He came back in. I thought he was finished.
Dr. William Pease is featuring quite high in the ANC list. But I think what is interesting for me is how talent is eroding in the provinces. I was actually looking at the Free State provincial list after Mxolisi Dukwana, its tickets, in that Free State province list, and it's a very serious province of vulnerability for the ANC. But I mean, if you think of politicians who've come and gone from the Free State, there seems to be a waning talent pool in terms of who the ANC is deploying. So I'm watching provinces quite interestingly. I mean, people like Action SA, Herman Mashaba yesterday introduced Team Fix SA, but some people don't even know the people there. But I mean, he's got the former CEO of the Health Professionals Council of South Africa, Dr. Khoshi Lape. I think Solly Mueng was also introduced, a strong voice in civil society. But people don't know those people. Only us.
Did you see anybody interesting on the MK lists? Because
Des Van Rooyen and Weekend Special.
no. But, okay, I mean,
I thought that was interesting.
Jack asked the question. So Jacob Zuma can't be president, according to that list. But who else is on there that is high up? I didn't recognize any names.
No. I mean, in the top 10, I mean, Des Van Rooyen, by virtue of being former minister, I mean, was Minister of Finance for 3 days over the weekend, following the removal of Nhlanhla, which we protested. Many of us protested that appointment. And then, of course, Jacob Zuma's daughter, Duzile, is featuring quite highly.
Number 8
on that MK list, and I think that's interesting signaling in terms of her wanting to play a role. And if you believe if you believe, we need to interrogate beyond the top 10 in the MK list, because the Brandhurst Foundation study that has come out placing MK at 13% nationally effectively means that MK could potentially deploy 40 to 45 members of parliament.
And they would do very well in provinces like KZN, where we know that they'll need a separate list. You also need your provincial leadership.
And their leadership that's potentially going to be in government, because there seems to be at least mathematically, there is no coalition that emerges without MK.
So let's stick to the MK and the ANC for a second, because the ANC's list you mentioned already, interesting things there, that they also, a lot of the old people are leaving.
Yeah.
So you've got your, Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma's, who's out now. Yeah. She's decided she's retiring. Pravin's out. Naledi Pando's out. Some of these people who've been around a long time. And they've brought in new names. Some of these names are a little bit more well-known than others. Some have been in cabinet, for example, deputy ministries, that sort of thing. The EFF's lists have not changed. They've hardly changed at all. Certainly the top 10 in there. You've got number 1, Julius, number 2, Floyd, number 3, Dalimpofu.
Mm-hmm.
Number 4, Godrich Gardi, I think. Number 5, Buiseni. Somewhere around there. Yeah. They're all more or less the same.
No, we'll have to see with
10 years, nothing's changed.
We will have to see. I mean,
well, thankfully they were young enough when they started all of this, so they don't necessarily have to change.
They're not dead yet.
They still feel young, by the way.
They still feel young, yeah.
But I think something interesting. I mean, look, the EFF list is still under seal at the moment, at least this one. I look forward to it coming out, because I do think that there are some interesting dynamics within the EFF itself. I mean, in terms of one, just how sometimes public representatives of that party are mistreated because
we saw this just last week.
There's just a heavy hand.
So it's called
accountability. It's called accountability, but I don't believe that it's the kind of version of accountability that you need. So over the past 5 years, the EFF has effectively let go of some MPs over the FNB Stadium bus issue. There was, the EFF has always tried to really act speedily on some people, and I think they might well try and bring in some freshness of new talent, but we must also be mindful that there are also internal battles currently underway in the EFF. There's always this under the surface kind of maneuver between the president and the deputy president of the EFF, and it plays sometimes itself out in this jostling for the top spots in the list. So people like Dalimpofu, who is no longer in the leadership of the EFF and probably has no appetite to go to parliament anyway, will probably not feature. What will be interesting is to see where the current MPs are ranked. Are they within, what we call an electable position? And an electable position is by virtue of a prediction of how much, a party is going to secure at the polls, and how many newer names are coming up. It will also be interesting to see who they choose to deploy for the Gauteng legislature, where they have communicated Mbuyiseni Ndlozi as their premier candidate in Gauteng. What team will they be putting behind Mbuyiseni Ndlozi for Gauteng? Because Gauteng is no longer a question of probabilities. Gauteng will be led by a coalition government, and that coalition government could feature the EFF. And so it will be an interesting signaling to the residents of Gauteng to say this is who the EFF believes can actually go into government in Gauteng.
Looking at the some of those lists, do you see any indication that there's certain parties that are more willing to lend themselves to coalition, or when you look at those lists, are there some that make you think, okay, by virtue of this person being so high up on the list, it doesn't seem as if a coalition could actually materialize?
No, sure. I mean, parties go to elections to win it, at least the bigger parties. But the more discerning parties know where to box. They probably, whilst they are thinking of possibilities of coalition, so they need to put some of their strongest people forward, particularly in Gauteng, in KwaZulu-Natal, possibly in the Western Cape, even though some people are still in denial about this. And then we probably have a wild card province where, like I said earlier, in the Free State, the ANC is quite vulnerable, and you start seeing the vulnerability.
Who are they vulnerable to?
They're vulnerable to, a mix of opposition. I think Ace Magashule is also an interesting one. If you looked at the poll that was released by Ipsos about a month ago, after ACT was featuring in that poll at about 1.5%. That 1.5% is probably most likely to come from the Free State itself. And of course, a mix of other opposition parties. And you see this in the composition of the Mangaung Metro. So, I mean, the ANC first starts being weak in the metros before it then becomes weak at a provincial level. So in the Mangaung Metro, they just made it, and they always need everybody to be alive and present at council. Otherwise, they lose the mayorship vote, which is how they lost the mayorship vote, and they went to court over that sitting, and then it was overturned. But the point is it indicates the vulnerability they have. So they can no longer arrogantly just be absent from, have some members being absent from council and think that they'll get everything passed. So the Free State is interesting for me at the back of my head in terms of looking there, because there's a mix of emerging small, community-based organizations and other parties that are very localized to the Free State and so on, of some personalities somewhere within the ANC universe, others were not. So I think they are vulnerable to a number of opposition parties. But again, when you look at the list, are people signaling that there will be a coalition? Some, I think, are mindful of that. They don't want to be caught flat-footed. Because coalition government can be an opportunity for you to showcase, to grow, and to expand.
I just want to quickly remind everybody who's joining us for the first time this morning that you can comment, and we will often put the comments to our guest. Today, Lukhona's happy to answer some of your questions. So if you've got something you want to ask him about the elections, you're welcome to do so. I also wanted to ask you this situation that we see in the news now. And I saw a bunch of people getting very hot under the collar about election observers.
Yeah.
This is like a nothing burger, because election observers come from all over the world to any country that allows them in.
Yeah.
We're one of those countries that says, whomsoever wants to come, let him come. Come and see. The IEC are very confident that they've got a free and fair election planned. They have been here in the studio with us. I was mightily impressed by them, I have to say. I think that they've got a very competent crew of people over there who are trying their best to make sure that every foreseeable obstacle is removed, and that we have the best possible turnout, the best possible election day, and the best possible accounting of the results. However, you are allowed to bring in election observers. Why is it so many people are getting really angry on Twitter, and why are the government upset about the idea that we could have election observers?
No, I don't think it's about the concept of election observers. I mean, the IEC system is open now for people to apply to be election observers until about next week, if I'm not mistaken, or early May, actually. I think here it's a political contestation. It's not about the observers. It's about the author of the letter,
which is John Steenhuisen and the DA.
Which is was probably a little tactless of the DA, because whilst they want to actually appear as caring enough about the elections and observers, then one might ask, why didn't you write to the African Union to send election observers?
But please, who in the whole universe is taking the African Union
exactly? You see,
who on God's earth is taking the African Union seriously?
But I mean, you write to Anthony Blinken in the US, and
frankly, who's taking him seriously?
It makes a political statement, because he too does probably not deserve to be taken seriously. He's also just facing an election to fight fight off Trump now,
right?
In the Biden campaign. So I think, Gareth, the issue is not about the observers. The issue is about the political tact. And you'll remember the DA has done a number of these now. They wrote to the FBI after the Pala Pala issue and the Ramadollars. And I think it's just that sense of appearing to be, why are you always signaling to one side of the universe? And then, of course, I mean, they had another fight with the national government, if you remember, when Alan Winde took a delegation from the Western Cape to the US to meet some Congress people because they wanted to create a case for South Africa's viability to remain in AGOA. Of course, John went there to peep through some stuff in Ukraine.
The Ukraine. I mean, it's
really about the DA politics rather than. And in any event, when you ask for observers, they often, more than anything, come outside of government structures. So you can't write to a government, for observers to come. They often come from, retired presidents, civil society, and all of these multilateral bodies. But once you signal to a government, and then some people are saying, but you are inviting the US to come meddle, as if it doesn't meddle anyway.
So, on the topic of the DA, they are part of this multi-party charter, this moonshot pact. by your estimation, how much of an impact will this pact have? And is it fool's gold, or what's happening there? Was there a point to all of this? Because to some of us from the outside looking in, it seems as if the DA, being the elephant in the room, sort of, just is trying to position themselves with everyone else just to put this thing together. That way they put themselves in a position whereby one of their core members within the DA is then put into strategic positions that they kind of take over the country.
No, sure. I mean, look, I think there was a sense of being genuine. Of course, politics, there's always the politics, but let's start with the genuine part. South Africans are becoming worn out by the fragmentation of the political landscape. Too many political parties, too many political players. It seems as if everybody has an ego, can't cooperate, can't work together, and. So that frustrates South Africans quite materially. So then what do? There has to be some form of consolidation that takes place. However, a pre-election consolidation has its own political limitations, because how the DA positioned itself when John Steenhuisen made this call for a moonshot pact last year, April, when he was giving his closing remarks at the DA Congress after having been re-elected leader of the DA. What he effectively did was to put the DA at the center and said everybody's coalescing around the DA, which is why the name was contested, for example, in terms of the Moonshot Pact, which is why when they then went to, at the Emperor's Palace, where they negotiated what eventually became the Charter of the Multiparty Charter of South Africa. And if you read the Charter quite extensively, it also demonstrates that the people in the room were also wary of the DA not using this as a proxy to just consolidate power for its own self, which is why there's a clause in the Charter that says the party with the largest share of the votes is not guaranteed that it will automatically, occupy the seat of president. And already, if you remember back then, the Sunday Times had led with a huge spread of an interview with Peter Groenewald of the FF Plus, who said that South Africa is not ready for a white president, and that he would go into those conversations backing the IFP president, Velenkosini Hlabisa, to become the face of the multi-party charter. There's still no agreement on those things. So whilst we know what parties are giving us, but we are not seeing an emerging multi-party charter list, and we're probably not going to see it. And I think this is the weakness of the multi-party charter. Its weakness is that whilst we are saying we are working together, we are still all on the same ballot, and we want you to make a choice among one of us. And what I think is emerging, if you look at how Action SA is losing momentum in the polls, is that the multi-party charter is probably beginning to hurt them, because the Action SA was eating in terms of, DA territory, if you look at the 2021 local government elections. But why should I why should I stop voting for the DA and then vote for Action SA if my vote anyway is guaranteed to be prioritized in a mix of the DA? That's the first instance. And I think that there's weakness there. There's also weakness in that the multi-party charter does not logically work across all provinces. So, for example, in KZN, the multi-party charter is fairly strengthened because the DA is fairly large and the IFP is growing, or at least MK now is starting.
That's where it will be the most useful.
That is where it will be most useful. But in Gauteng, for example, where the IFP is really a very small player, they have one seat in the legislature. Highly unlikely that the DA will cross the line only on the multi-party charter universe. They have to think carefully about what they now say about the EFF. I mean, if you think back how John Steenhuisen last year April declared the EFF political enemy #1, but when he was launching his manifesto, he made no mention of the EFF. So he has toned down, I think, and he's being advised that anyway, be careful, because you don't know where you're going to land up in terms of the arrangements, because the mathematics of the multi-party charter does not work across all provinces. And in any case, I mean, I think South Africans also just don't like, while they like robust politics, they don't like this politics that seems to divide people and pit them against one another. Because once you say the DA is political enemy, I mean, the EFF is political enemy #1, then you're also encouraging your supporters to view EFF voters as enemies, and some people stay in the same households and they vote. One votes the DA, one votes the EFF, and because the DA has, in actual fact, support in areas where the EFF also has support, in communities like Tembisa, in the northern townships of the city of Tshwane, as an example, and so on. So the point really is that I think the multi-party charter is an interesting phenomenon, but I think it has significant political limitations because it demonstrates how difficult consolidating our political landscape is. Because if the multi-party charter was sitting on the ballot as one umbrella party, that would be interesting. That would be game changing. But now there's nothing significant.
It's like they're all keeping their options open.
Keep our lines open to one another. And I think, with introduction of, and when the MPC was there was no imagination of MK. And I think MK is a really significant entrant and disruptor. Because now you have to make difficult choices. In KZN, for example. So what is the priority? Is it to keep the ANC out? Irrespective of who you do it with, or is it to keep the ANC in so that you keep MK out? Which one is now a better devil?
So this is interesting because Azalea says in the comments, so basically the ANC is going to win. That's not what you're saying.
No. That's not what I'm saying.
In fact, their overall share of the vote has dropped. But the interesting thing is, who are they going to have to be friends with? And who are all the other parties going to have to be friends with if they want things? And I say friends, I mean in coalition. Who are they going to have to need to rely on in order to make these coalitions work? And actually, someone said to me the other day, we are such a diverse country. It makes perfect sense that we would have to have coalition governments. Because we're constantly having to negotiate, these different elements in society, different language groups, different ethnic groups, different levels of wealth or poverty, different levels of age. There are all kinds of things going on. So we need a government that is made up of all these different smaller groups. But do you think that there are going to be any big surprises? I mean, we see a lot of these polls coming out now. We spoke about the Brenthurst one just this week because that's big news. And some people are very angry about this. Floyd Kibambo says it's bullshit. He's not even paying attention to it, right? Are you expecting any surprises? Is there any kind of, because you also do these focus groups, you speak to lots of people and you're trying to get a handle on the future. Anything that you're really concerned about and or excited about?
I think I'm excited about the possibility of a national coalition government, whichever way it swings, because I think it will be the first step towards, the dominance of the ANC defining politics in South Africa starting to wane. If you look at how politics is done in South Africa, it doesn't matter whether you're the DA or the EFF and so on. The standard is the ANC. The way in which you do elections, the way in which you do campaigns. Everybody now wants to occupy a stadium. Everybody has mad amounts of posters all over the country. Everybody has. There's almost like a list of things that the ANC has defined in terms of how to do politics, and it's become a very expensive exercise to actually compete on that scale with the ANC.
It is interesting that IFP, ANC, and EFF all had their rallies in Moses Mabhida.
Because that's the battleground.
That's where it's going down.
Battleground.
That's where it's going down.
Gauteng is a given that it will be a coalition government. KZN, not so much. And it is a battleground because even the introduction of MK Party, if you look at the by-elections that the MK Party has contested in, it's clear that it has taken takes support from the ANC, from the IFP, from the EFF. So it's important for those parties to also be in KZN to reassure their constituencies that they're still dominant, they are still able. I mean, I think for the IFP, it was probably the first time they've tried to fill up such a big stadium. I mean, they've always taken, like Chatsworth Stadium.
They did okay
in Durban, and I was impressed. I must say, I was very impressed at how I was doubtful if they would be able to fill up Mabhida. But it's again that demonstration of strength, of force. Reassure your voters, reassure your party members, let them go out there and communicate with society and campaign, with a sense of vigor. So I think
by the way, Thabisa, he talked for hours. It felt like hours.
Well, it's probably still shorter than Prince
Mangosuthu
the late, bless his soul. But the point is, I'm excited about the possibility of a coalition government nationally, because even if it's still the ANC in power, but them needing another player to remain in power will create an interesting dynamic and conversation. And I think it will open up the 2029 elections to be even much more interesting, and so on. I am worried, of course, about what that means, because remember, now we're in 2024. And soon enough, we will be transitioning to talk about the local government elections in 2026. Whether they'll be in 2026 or early 2027, it will depend on the president and the IEC's conversations about that. But the 2026 local government elections are probably then even going to be more worrisome for people, and depending on what will be happening at the time with whatever coalition governments in the provinces and in national, it may make voters lose appetite for coalition politics, whilst inherently our society is as diverse as Gareth is saying. But the voter has a problem to accept coalitions, because sometimes they're noisy, they look chaotic, there's bickering rather than centering the citizens and so on. And in that sense, some people might then retreat to not take chances with newer political parties, not take chances with smaller political parties, but actually want to go back to what they may deem parties that have a chance to win. And that would be retreating back to establishment parties like the ANC, the DA, and of course now the EFF is probably in its third election becoming an establishment party too.
Interesting times. I know it was brought to our attention a couple of weeks ago that South Africa, historically speaking, we've kind of dealt with one party at a time. Like, so during apartheid, of course, it was the National Party. Ever since 1994, we've only had to deal with the ANC. So moving forward, we're going to, we're going to have to muddle our way through it and try figure it out. But I think the public's participation after the vote is what I've got my eyes, I'm keenly watching there, because there's going to be a lot of upheaval in certain corners of this country, whether we like it or not. Violence has never been devoid in our politics in this country. We know of ward councillors being killed and a whole host of other really horrible things. So yeah, man, I like you've given me certainly quite a bit to think about, because you brought up a couple of things that actually did not cross my mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think also, it depends where you are. So if you're in Gauteng, yes, that is the concern. But if you're in KZN, where you've seen, IFP lead from 1994, right about 2004, in coalition with the ANC, 2004, Bundebele takes over again in coalition with the IFP. And then in 2006, November, that coalition breaks down. And the ANC then goes in coalition with the UDM and the Minority Front to 2009. And in 2009, the ANC becomes an outright majority winner in KZN. So KZN has always been a sort of an interesting story of success for democracy for me. Whilst we always talk about the political violence and so on, but power has changed hands so many times in KZN. I mean, who will forget Zanele Magwaza Gamsibi, the late, in 2011, coming with the National Freedom Party. And that led to almost 19 or 20 hung councils that forced the NFP into a coalition with the ANC. So people of KZN have seen this, and I think they're not nervous in actual fact about it. And that's why when you talk to people in KZN, they're most likely to split their votes nationally and provincially, because they've seen, they hedge their bets differently. You go to the Western Cape. I mean, at some point, Helen Zille was holding on to the mayorship in the city of Cape Town with one vote. Or something ridiculous like that. The Western Cape government itself, I mean, the likes of Ibrahim Rasool, Lynn Brown have led that province on behalf of the ANC, and power has changed hands to the DA. And so it's some provinces have just not been in it in this democracy story and seeing power change hands, but some provinces actually have, and they've been fine. And I think that people of Gauteng should not be scared. They will be fine.
Well, it's all we got time for this morning. It's always great to have you in here, Lukhona. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great insights. And I think there's some valuable, useful information you could put into your overall impression of what may or may not happen. But certainly some clear answers for you also on things that otherwise just get bandied about in the Twitter universe.
Absolutely.
And most of that's just terrible.
I always say Twitter is a space, not a place. So take it with a pinch of salt.
And let's not forget that when we talk about space, most of space is a vacuum.
Absolutely.
How's the PhD going?
Oh, I'm on a break, I must say. Too much work around the elections. After these elections, I'll go back. I just have to write it up. I've done the research. I've transcribed. I just have to sit down for about 6 months, write it, and then get over with it. But I think the work that we've been doing around the elections, playing our small role to try and safeguard the democracy space has been much more important to me.
And let's just be clear that the Rivonia Circle is very different to Rise Mzansi, which
Absolutely.
is now Songezo's
Absolutely.
political party.
That's the political party.
Right.
Rivonia Circle remains a political think tank, and we are growing our footprint in terms of partnerships. We are doing some work with the Danish embassy on coalition governments, actually. We are doing some work with Constitutionalism Fund. We are doing some work even with other, role players in the political space. We are still being asked to come moderate, facilitate, and all of this.
Are you taking American money to destabilize our election?
Yeah, taking some money from foreign governments. You've got to get money from somewhere. No. I mean, I think we try our level best to make sure that we apply for grants to institutions that are aligned with our work, that can support our work. There'll always be criticism, but it's always easier for people who want to. There are people who want to be professional critics, and always fault find with those who are trying to get some solutions to the problems that we confront as a country. I'm happy with the work that we do, and I don't. Some people will always say it's like you sleep and wake up with a phone call from George Soros every morning telling you what to do, remote controlling your thinking. And sometimes
is he a funder?
No, not him.
Society?
Open Society Foundation. We've definitely gotten some good grants from them. And
he's coming under some heavy fire in Haiti at the moment.
No, of course. I mean, for good reason, he takes slack. But the truth is that there is no one who tells us what to do. In fact, I get sad sometimes when I see stuff on social media because one of the things we have not seen is institutions that are, built from scratch, particularly by Black people in spaces where, Black people have not really played a meaningful role in building institutions. I mean, we are beating up now with well-established institutions. The Rivonia Circle is only 2 years old, and we are committed to build it into the future. And I think that's the story that gets to be untold when we focus on these things about who your funders are and so on. The story that actually here are people who are building an institution from scratch and introducing some innovative ways of how to do democracy. And our colleagues get invited internationally to various forums. My colleague Tessa Dooms, Yolondi Wemlam, and others. They go on regional conferences, international conferences. We are resource people, we are speakers. We are talking now. The World Global Assembly on Democracy is coming to South Africa later this year, and we're in conversation with the Secretariat for that to assist and so on. So we are doing well. I'm happy with where we are, and we are really committed, Gareth, to build a political think tank. Of course, there has been that journey of Beth towards Rise Mzansi, and Rise Mzansi has a life
and
of
there's
its own.
some very interesting candidates in Rise Mzansi who are getting quite a lot of attention at the moment.
Yeah.
Good attention. All right. Lukhona, we're going to let you get back to your hard work and your PhD, among other things. And very good to have you here this morning.
No. Always a pleasure.
Lukhona Mnguni and Jack Mutlante and Gareth Cliff, thank you. That's all we got time for this morning.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. That's Democracy 101. We will see you tomorrow at 6 a.m.